Wowzers, you made it to episode 6 of the AI Bot Show. I'm Carl Franklin. That's my friend Brian MacKay. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Carl. How's it going?
And his coworker and friend, Ned Emerson. Hi, Ned.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing all right. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So I know that we're going to talk about D&D in the context of GPT.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know anything more than that because I'm going to just hand it over to you guys and you can take it from here.
All right. So let me, so Ned is a developer I work with at Roster, and also a composer. I think he's got a music degree. But most importantly for our purposes, he's a dungeon master for D&D, and he's been doing that for over a decade. And he's got a homemade universe that he's been building out for about 20 years. So the intersection of D&D, and we work with GPT at Roster. You know, we do AI stuff there behind the scenes. So not only has he figured out that he can use this to help his games, which I think a lot of people will like and can benefit from. We might not get into it in this episode, but he's also building tools to automate that more. So that's all really interesting.
Very cool. So let's start with what Dungeons and Dragons is for those who have no idea.
Yeah, that's an important starting point.
Yeah.
So Dungeons & Dragons is a tabletop role-playing game. You usually have characters who play through adventures, either pre-made or made up by a game master, or in D&D's case, a dungeon master.
Mm-hmm.
There are, big honking rule books like this. But you can also really build out, there's no rules on the universe. You can break all the rules. It all depends on what the group likes to do.
Okay.
And there's a ton of role-playing games out there now. Again, the biggest one, or the most recognizable one, is D&D 5e, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Dungeons & Dragons has been around it's got to be close to 50 years, right?
I remember seeing it when I was in elementary school. So, yeah, that was 50 years ago, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It was not allowed when I grew up.
Oh.
Where I grew up.
Okay. I can see that happening. So it sounds like there's an awful lot of creativity allowed for dungeon masters and people to build their worlds and to come up with challenges. But there are some standard things, right? Like different points that you start out with as a character, right? What's that all about?
So, and again, you can homebrew a ton of rules in this, but they do all the books give you a really good framework to, set up and run an adventure, a pre-made or get your own world with those rules in mind. So usually the game starts with your players picking out what kind of characters they want to be, and then actually filling out character sheets with the information. Like I'm a, elf, druid, or I'm a, dragon, barbarian. And then, then you go on quests and adventures, and they all link together in what people call a campaign. That's the overarching story that you're telling together. And one of the great things about D&D is that since, you have the rules to fall back on, but you can basically do whatever you want in the universe, which is what sets it apart from like modern video games or anything like that. If you really want to get involved with some random baker's life or open up a donut shop in a city, which my players had done, you can do that. Wait
a minute, was that a real life donut shop?
It was, in the universe. It was a real life donut shop.
So not real life. Okay.
Not real life, but yes. I couldn't have called it. I couldn't have said, my players are going to make a donut shop, but that's what they wanted to do, and it has mild success in their achieving their goals.
So that actually is a pretty cool segue, because a lot of people might not be prepared for generating the appropriate donut drama that would ensue. Like, your players decide they want to create a donut shop, you've got to go with that. So, like, how do you tie donuts into a fantasy world? You could definitely say, GPT, give me 20 ideas for donut-related orc plots.
Yeah, only one of these 20 or only one of these dozen donuts is a magic donut, and the other ones are not. It's like donut roulette, right?
We could actually show this like kind of convoluted plot idea. We could do it right now and just show like what would happen if you ask GPT to help come up with donut plots.
Yeah, actually, that'd be great. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Well, I've got my screen shared. So I like to use pseudoling. So I'll just, Ned, we'll all collaborate on this. So I'm going to just say, Dungeon Master. And I'm going to tell it that you are I like the word brilliant, gets the best out of it. You are a brilliant D&D expert. I'm going to say actually Dungeons and Dragons.
And also add in 5e there as well, too. If we're going to ask it about rules later on, it's good to specify which edition, because there's been a bunch.
Okay.
Let's do this. We'll say, so in the pseudoling world, it's pretty easy to add things like this and then say, actually, we'll call it preferences for now, or we'll say preferences. And one thing we'll say is rule set, rules equals 5e. And that may be all we have to do to get it to do 5th edition rules. And we'll add more things to the preferences as we go. Specializing in, we're not even going to say that. Actually, let's see if we can do this all with pseudoling. So rules.
Okay.
I guess we could just get right into it and say, my characters decided to start a donut shop. So what else do we have from this world? Like, what's the intersection? You could even tell it like what the forces are that are just present, and you could get a lot done, right?
You could. Well, let's make up an assumption to base off of, and then ask it for ideas helping us. So let's say they decided to start a donut shop on a island in an archipelago. Our universe is an archipelago. Why not? Give me some names of competing pastry shops that might operate in this area.
What's their shop called?
Well, how about give me ideas for names? You don't have to say for competing, just some names, and you can pick one for you and give everybody else the others.
Okay, so I might normally tell it make sure they're D&D names, but I think it probably has. We'll say that would make sense in my game world.
Okay.
And we could put more information over here about what the game world entails.
Right.
All right. So, and what I would normally do is say, give me 20, but I'm going to say, give me 10 just to make it so Carl doesn't have to read 20.
Give me some. So you could just say, give me 10 names.
Yeah, sure. Give me 10 names for donut shops.
Yeah.
10 is good. There can only be so many donut shops in the archipelago anyways.
Mystic Ring's Sweet Retreat.
Oh, Gygax Glazed Goodies, based on Gary Gygax.
That's a little meta there, because Gygax does not exist in this world, or does he?
I don't know what you guys are talking about, but it sounds fun.
The creator of D&D is Gary Gygax.
Oh, okay.
So we can tell it understands that we're talking about
using
dragons.
alliteration too.
Yes.
Merfolk's mouth-watering munchkins.
Circle of the Sugared Sprite. So we could definitely say, like, give me some that don't involve alliteration. Like probably what happened is it started generating tokens that alliterated, and then it just decided that the rest of them should continue to do that. These are pretty good. It also cues you with, like, who was Baelnorn? Like you could go right into developing like more from what it's giving you.
Yeah, sure.
So we want to make an enemy donut shop and like build out a plot for it.
Well, yeah. Let's say that our players make Triton's Truffle Twists. That's their shop, and a good competing one would probably be Merfolk's Mouthwatering Munchkins.
Sure.
Okay. The competing shop will be, I'm actually going to say number 10. That's probably good enough. Now what do we want? Conflict? Like, give me 20 sources of conflict, or do you want to build out the merfolk more?
Or how about powers that the donuts have?
Ooh.
Are they going to have powers?
They could be like potions. Quaff a donut.
Give me some ideas for positive and negative powers of donuts.
Yeah. How about this? Are they magical, associated with some god, etc.?
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like number 1 might be true for me.
Cleric's communion.
These are kind of powerful.
Feel the donut power.
Gnomish delights. Gnomish chefs have perfected the art of baking. Their special donuts, when eaten, can restore HP, even cure. So it's like some kind of health potion. Dragon's breath donut, filled with a special hot chili paste that mimics a dragon's breath when bitten into. Can be used as distraction or traps.
I like number 6, the 6 sugar circle. Deciphering the special runes on these donuts could reveal unknown truths or even prophecies. A donut that you buy that knows something about you.
Oh. Or it could be like the puzzle box on Hellraiser.
Did it stop because of the maximum length?
Yeah, it did.
Probably.
I got to crank this up. But so these are pretty good. I kind of like eating this chaotic donut. I'm going to guess polymorph puffs. You eat it and it turns you into something.
Yeah.
Let's ask it for some donuts that the merfolk donut shop would make.
Have you actually gone through this exercise on your own, or is this the first time?
This one, no. This is the first time for me.
Pearl Glaze Delight, a round donut covered in a shiny pearl glaze mimicking the treasure of the ocean. These are pretty good. Abyssal jelly, filled with the mysterious dark sweet jelly. This donut is as enigmatic as the ocean depths.
Coral Crunch.
Oh, these are nice. Actually, so this gives me an idea already. Maybe the players have an idea, or so maybe the merfolk only produce these donuts, which these aren't magical at all. They just have cool undersea names. So maybe the players see an opening in the market for donuts that actually have magical properties.
Merfolk aren't going to like that.
They're not going to like that.
So do you want to, what's next? You want to ask it for some conflict between these two groups? You have an idea there.
Yeah, let's ask it how the merfolk donut shop would respond when Triton's truffles, when they start producing magically laced donuts.
By the way, did you know that it's really good at this type of question? You can ask it geopolitical questions, like what happens if Mexico invades Argentina, and it'll tell you how the world will respond, and it's pretty good.
Wow. It can't tell the future, obviously.
Players beginning to create magical donuts.
Yeah. Competitive innovation. Magical audit.
Now that's a good one. That's like these are coming up. These are some really good quest ideas.
They could hire a wizard to perform a magical audit of Triton's truffle twists. This could ensure there's no foul play or dangerous magic involved. So it's like regulatory capture. They're going to like bring the regulators in to
and that can expand. I've even had very early on in my campaign, I even had dwarf lawyers appear to prosecute players for killing another NPC at one point.
Okay.
But that could spiral out of control and make some really interesting and just hilarious scenes.
These are great ideas. Initiate a challenge, ally and collaborate, exploration and espionage. All of these.
Yeah, they're all good.
Yeah.
Oh, the bake-off could be good too.
A bake-off. Ooh. I challenge you to a bake-off.
That would be a friendly challenge that maybe goes wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's a third party who is just looking to stir up trouble. So when the bake-off happens, they assassinate the leader of the merfolk. Chaos ensues.
Oh.
It's a possibility.
Okay.
Whatever. That's just an idea. Oh, so Ned, you're in charge. Which one of these do we go with?
Oh, I like the magical audit.
Yeah, that's cool.
I like universes that sometimes respond to these things in government-oriented ways.
Okay. So what do you want to do next? Is that enough, or do you need people, or like how would you proceed?
Let's ask it to give us a name of a wizard who performed the magical audit.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be enough to start with.
Okay, let's do that. Give us the name of the wizard. Give me 5 ideas.
Yeah.
I would not have thought to name it the Examiner.
Oh man.
Voral of the Vigilant Eye. I actually like that better.
Yeah.
These are great. Valorian the Truth Seeker.
So we need some twists now.
That's too easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Voral of the Vigilant Eye. That's good.
Yeah, I like the quantifier too. Okay, so let's go with Voral. So when this type of thing happens on a TV show, there's often like a twist where something about the auditor is off, or they're compromised, or they have some kind of interests, right, that conflict with what they're supposed to be doing.
Wow.
I don't know. What do you think? What do you want to go after next year?
Give Voral a flaw, in other words?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We could say, let's go with Voral. Give Voral a flaw that the merfolk can exploit.
Yeah.
To make him, I don't know how to fudge the results. Yeah.
To bias the results.
Whoa. Yeah. Oop. Magical gluttony. Very susceptible to the allure of new and fascinating magic. Oh, that's great.
Ooh, unreciprocated love for a mermaid.
Oh, man.
Sweets addiction.
Fear of sharks.
Debtor's guilt. He's got a debt. He's compromised by a debt. That's a real thing.
Oh.
Reputation overdrive.
Oh, yeah, you could do a lot of these. Fear of sharks, I instantly had this idea, because it would be a great scene. Like, all of a sudden, in the middle of the audit, he just gets panicked and runs off screaming shark. And you see an illusion of a shark chasing him in the streets.
Right. You want to go with fear of sharks?
No, let me look at the other ones here.
Okay, so we've got magical gluttony, sea longing. That's kind of a funny one. Sweets addiction, fear of sharks, debtor's guilt. So he's got a loan out to them, and they're gonna loan shark him. He's afraid of sharks. Reputation overdrive.
That one wouldn't be as funny, I don't think.
Probably not. A pleasure for disguise, delusion of grandeur, lover of music, and curious about aquatic magic.
I like number 1.
Magical gluttony.
Yeah, mesmerized. Susceptible to the allure of new and fascinating magic. Because that's kind of like, squirrel. Hey, look at this shiny magic thing over here. It could be complete BS, but
I think that works. That also, so the idea could be the merfolk are tempting him with a very powerful item.
Right.
And if the players figure it out and play all their cards right, they could actually get that item at the end of the quest.
And number 10 is kind of similar, isn't it? But it's more curious about aquatic magic. So they could lead the wizard, out to a dangerous place on the rocks to see this magic. And then, I don't know. It's very similar.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to try something too. I like, those are both fine. I just want to try this. Give me 5 ideas that are more inspired by how foreign governments compromise real, human assets.
Okay. Wow.
Although that does suggest that this merfolk donut shop has a lot of pull in their society.
Well, maybe it's important. Maybe it's like a foothold on the ground that they're using to influence
it.
Right.
So this is interesting. I just wanted to see how much it could be steered. Compromising materials with blackmail,
Right.
There's a nymph that they got close to him that's messing with his judgment. Financial influence, dual allegiance, hidden threats.
Good.
All good. All right. You choose, Ned.
I think the honey trap works. I think you could combine the honey trap with the magical gluttony.
Ooh.
It's sort of both. You have a temptress who's tempting in her own right, but also tempts him with the magic he seeks.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's just building together. Let's combine honey trap and magical gluttony. So now what? Do we want to have it just like generate an outline, or
yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Do you want more background or more color? What do you think?
And what you do at this point depends on just is your needs of a DM. Like at this point, I might stop and then generate that idea on my own or think out a few things, because sometimes it'll be based on the characters, or I might combine it with an overarching plot that's going on. I like in my campaigns, I have a lot of villains who like to disguise themselves, so that's a great chance for them to show up somewhere. But yeah, we can ask it for a basic outline of a quest that starts with this premise and potentially ends with them. Well, let me see. I don't want to dictate how it ends. I don't like doing that.
Yeah.
Just give us we want to outline just giving us the major players in this, like Vorel, maybe a few of the merfolk, the nymph, and write us out what they're each looking for. And that way we can sort of simulate as things happen what they would do in these cases.
Would it make sense to put in the system prompts? Like I put the preference that you just said that villains tend to disguise themselves. Would it make sense to put information about the characters here so we can start to have it consider the characters or even the players?
We could. We could actually add in let's see. We could add in a character preference and say, Hector the Barbarian hates goblins. And I don't know quite yet how I would pull those two together, but that's something that we could actually play upon at some point. Maybe just as the characters are about to find out something interesting about Vorel, a bunch of goblins appear.
Okay.
And then they can realize that, it was a clever ploy by the merfolk to distract you from the truth.
Okay. Can we have like two more characters that we put together?
Sure. Let's see. We'll talk about this in a second. I'm bad at coming up with names on the spot. This is not a good thing that GPT is great for.
Didn't you?
That's true. We could generate some names.
We could generate some names.
We could even say, like, generate 3 character ideas. We can just derail for a second, delete these when we're done. Generate 3 character ideas that can go into the system prompt. I wonder if it'll know what that is. Similar to what we did for Hector. It might actually just be able to do this.
Might be a little meta.
It might be. I need to put a closing bracket there. It might not matter.
Millie the Mermaid Enchantress.
That's funny. You probably don't have a mermaid player, but it picked up on what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Actually, having a mermaid player makes all the sense because
it does.
It sort of amplifies that problem with the conflict.
Mm-hmm. Nereus the Alderman.
Oh, these are all merfolk. Give me some that are not merfolk. Use normal D&D classes.
Okay.
There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Pelagia the Bard.
Just like silence and rudeness.
Now, we'll just go with these, I'm thinking, unless you have another thought, but I'm going to, rather than format this myself into JSON, I'm going to tell it to format these as JSON.
Good.
Which is what this is. It's kind of a JSON-y. JSON is from programming JavaScript object notation.
Doug Crockford.
Did Crockford discover that?
Yeah. He doesn't claim to have invented it. He claims to have discovered it. He's a cool guy.
Yeah, I imagine you know him, huh?
Yeah. I sat at dinner with him next to him. And I don't know if I should tell this on the show, but you'd ask him a question, and it was almost like a stoned response. You'd ask him a question, and he'd just go. And then like a minute later, he'd go, yes. And I don't know if he was thinking hard or had one too many doobies. I don't know, but he's a brilliant guy.
Yeah, he wrote JavaScript, the good parts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very influential book for those who don't know. All right. So, I mean, there are some good parts in JavaScript. I didn't know about it until the book came out.
Lots of bad parts too.
You gotta, when you have to have a book called The Good Parts, you know there are problems.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I didn't even read these. We converted them to JSON. I dropped them in here. We're going to assume that now it knows about Thalia, Emmerich, and Alesia. Alesia. All right. Okay. So I'm going to delete all this stuff that we did. We kind of derailed here.
But you don't want all of it because we're using it, right? Are you putting everything that we decided into the system prompt?
No, I just wanted to know I wanted to have some characters that it knows about that can start to inform.
Oh, you're not deleting everything. Okay.
Right. Yeah, I'm not deleting it. I wanted to remember all this. You could take the time to boil this all down into something that goes in the system prompt and start over and be really efficient with your context. But we're good here. We're not close to 25 pages. We're fine. So there's no need. All right. But I also don't want to derail this. I want to keep it going in this direction. So
sure.
All right. So now that we have characters, what's next?
So we could ask it to give us an outline for an adventure that incorporates the likes and dislikes of the characters to engage them.
Cool.
Yeah, and if we had more time and we were really being methodical, I would probably ask it first for ideas.
Yes.
Decide on them and then make the outline. Because then you just have more control over the outcome, but this is fine and it'll probably be great. And we'll also find out whether it's doing a good job of picking up on this. Yes, there we go. Alesia the Bard. By the way, as this writes out, this format over here of like this specific format of like quote character, you don't have to do it that way. This is just what popped out of GPT. I would actually write it without the quotes. Like I did up here, just to be more human readable. So don't get confused. I can imagine people like trying to type this exactly the way we've got it here. It's not necessary.
And you can always ask it to format it however you want, right?
Yep. I could have spent more time and said, do it a different way, take out all the quotes, but I didn't want people to have to watch me do that.
Sure.
The Enchanter's Eclair. It does immediately make me think that we should have asked it for like more ideas up front.
Yeah.
There's 4. This is a 4-act structure. Interesting.
Well, it's also telling us exactly what happens, which is not necessarily what we're looking for.
Yeah,
we're
right.
looking for more beats to, or events that may happen. Again, depending on how people run their campaigns, I run mine a little bit more freeform. The players could just be like, oh, that's nice, and then walk off in some different direction and never come back to that at all.
Let me ask this from a place of knowledge of D&D. Don't you roll dice to figure out what happens in a particular situation? So you really don't want a story where everything's completed. Is that what you're saying? You want to be able to roll dice to determine the course of action.
Well, yeah, because the whole outcome could change based on a certain roll. For instance, if you're trying to persuade Viral to tell you why he spiked your donuts, you would roll what's called a check in D&D to see if you actually persuade him. And if you do, he might give up the information. But if you can't for some reason, or you critically fail, he might not do anything, and you have to change your tactics to figure it out.
So does a dungeon master have to create an outline that has outcomes based on the roll of the dice at every point?
Not that in depth.
Okay.
You can build in some scenarios, like some adventures will say like, oh, if the party, manages to persuade, and they don't say how you persuade them, persuade Viral to give up his secrets, he tells them X, Y, Z.
I see.
You could do that. I play it more of I try to role play the characters myself, and I say, all right, Viral, he wants to keep his shameful secret that he's being manipulated, because he doesn't want to ultimately give up this magical item that he cares about.
Right.
And he also wants to live.
Okay.
So it will do, I will role play that based on what the party does, and we just sort of see where it goes from there. So I might have some set pieces in motion or in place, because one aspect of preparing for D&D is preparing encounters where you actually have combat, which is one of the big fun parts of the game.
Right.
So I may have a few of these pre-built out, and I will try to, at certain points, funnel them with different hooks to get there. So Viral might say, I don't know why they really cared about the donuts, but there just happens to be a donut guild meeting here tonight. You could go check it out.
Interesting.
And there's clearly going to be a setup for combat there if they want to do that.
Yeah.
If not, I might, not wanting to waste my time making this big set piece battle, I might find other ways to follow them to the same kind of map under different pretenses. It depends. But
here's the thing. Let me just cut it real quick.
Yeah.
In a good D&D game, and any role-playing game really, the person running it and the players have to be highly improvisational.
Yeah.
So it doesn't lend itself to outlines, because you could make a whole story about a necromancer and his werewolf friends, and you're going to do this and that. And the players are like, you know what? I sense a void in the market for donuts. What do you guys think?
Well, here's a question. Could you just use the playground while you're playing D&D and just have GPT come up with what happens next?
You could. It's not as responsive. I try not to use it to generate content on the fly unless it's really simple things that I need. Because it does, you put in your prompt and then you just sort of sit there and the game just stops.
Okay.
It also breaks the illusion because, and I don't, everyone feels differently about these things, but the players sometimes also feel like it's less fun if I'm just offloading.
I see.
The main part of the campaign to GPT.
The whole point of playing the game is to come up with interesting and fun, creative ways that things happen.
Yeah, and when it goes well, there's this really human connection that just vibrates through the group. And if you stop and type on your laptop, you blow it.
I see.
Yeah, and this is a good, actually, segue to how I got started and another example we could look at. So, as part of any kind of good quest, at the end of it, you get treasure.
Okay.
And in the books, they have a really good system of randomly determining what kind of treasure is in a dragon's hoard, which I really like, because then as a DM, I can't metagame and say oh, this item is too powerful. I don't want my players to have that because it will ruin everything.
Right.
That sort of ruins the fun. So we had one session where my players reached this big metropolis and they mandated that they had to go shopping for magical items, which is great. But I wanted to keep that same sort of non-metagame integrity going.
Yeah.
So I said okay, let's, for fun, just roll through these tables and figure out which magic items are for sale. And that turns out to be a little bit more complicated in that case, because at the same time, you have to think up like who's selling a magic item, how much they're selling it for, how do they describe it in an advertisement? Like if you go to a magic items broker and say like, what have you got for me, Carl? Like, you're not going to say, well, I've got an item that gives you +3 to your AC. Like
whatever that means.
That's very, now I'm forgetting the phrase. No, it sort of just breaks the illusion of that you're in this fantasy world. You know, at some point you have to tell them the real item things, but
yeah, okay.
It shouldn't be an NPC really that tells them like, oh, this is a great item. You know, it gives you a +1 to your attack roll. That's,
NPC?
Non-player character.
NPC,
Sorry.
Okay.
Yep. So players play as player characters. Anything I run is a non-player character.
I see. So are we done with this example? Do you have another one?
Yes, I want to go one step further with this and just try something before we move on with this.
Okay.
So we've created a 4-act structure, which is not really right. I want to see if we can tell it to coerce this into something that's a little more useful.
Okay.
So what if we actually said to it, in D&D, strict outlines like this tend to fall apart due to player agency. How could you translate this into something more useful for a dungeon master? I just want to see what it says.
Okay.
It thrives on player agency decision-making. Here's a more adaptable framework for the Enchanter's Eclair scenario. And now we've got a hook, plot points.
Oh, this is much better.
Another really cool thing is that you could color in little areas by saying like, there's a speech that some character has to give. Write me that speech, you know, like then you just read off the speech and that's pretty acceptable in a role-playing game. Yeah. So this is, you know, it's feeling a little more like better. If this, then that, you know, like seeds of future adventures. They vow to retaliate. Saying that, yeah. So, you know, I feel like,
that's perfect.
Yeah. I feel like this is way easier to improvise off of and reference during a game.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What's next, Ned?
So we're going to talk about, shopping for magical items. So in this is the point where I realized that GPT could be really helpful for these things. So it's sort of opened the floodgates for me. But we spent about an hour because again, you can't just pick the items randomly. You also have to figure out who's selling them, what they're selling them for, what price, you know, how might they describe them. And then, that's a lot of work. Even before the players decide, oh, I'm going to go meet with this person and try to exchange, gold for magical items, which in a fantasy world could be a more terse exchange than just like, oh, here's money, here's a magical item. Like, what if the players want to rob that guy? So it took us an hour to do that, which may have just been us being inefficient, but nevertheless, it's a big deal for our campaign because we only get to play for 2 hours each week, it's very short.
Now, when you say hour, who are you talking about?
Hour is my D&D campaign, but it physically took us 1 hour of time to actually complete this process of just figuring out what was available for them to buy in magical items.
Okay.
And even then, if you're rolling on a random table that gives you a random magical item, not all of them are necessarily useful for the players, it's even worse because it's a waste of time because now no one wants to buy anything that you've come up with and everyone feels worse for it.
All right.
So I realized at that point, maybe GPT 1 knows the rule books and 2 can just handle a lot of these things for me. And it's very simple, but it's, Brian has a save of the prompt, but you can basically just tell it, hey, give me a list of magical items that are right from the rule books. Give me the name of the NPC asking the item, the price of the item, and a brief description, but don't say the rules. Just say what the item might do in the real world or in the fantasy world. And you could say, give me 3 items that are good for a druid, which is one of the classes in Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay. I'm doing it. So I took your prompt that you sent me before the episode, dropped it in here, and now we're getting item ideas from a shop. And I bet I could say, so these are kind of, maybe they're good, maybe they're not, but I bet we could then give this more character. Like we could say, rewrite the descriptions, but make them as though they're being spoken by a, mischievous goblin.
Beautiful.
Named Fredo. Fred's not.
Fredo.
Alfredo.
I think your D&D game would be a lot different than mine, Carl.
Yeah.
A lot more silliness. Fredo's pitch, it even just changed it to his pitch. Got a stick here, see? Made from good, wholesome tree stuff, all right? Smack critters with it. Or get this, make them do what you want. Animals, plants, the lot. Yeah,
that's pretty good, man.
Strap it around your neck and bam! You're harder to knock down than an old oak.
And this is actually fairly accurate, too. It's actually grabbed items from the books. You have to specify it, otherwise it'll just make up its own stuff.
Yeah.
But that's like, I can't describe how helpful that is to have that in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And just, like, that's a lot of quick things that in session can be hard to just come up with off the top of your head, because as a DM, you're thinking of other things. You're trying to keep the session going. You're thinking about, like, oh, I've got a big combat encounter coming up next, all sorts of stuff.
And you could even do this. You could say, like, for the cloak of the bat, give me some ideas for things Fredo might ask for instead of money. That's great. Fredo don't need gold items. Go this time around. We got a little alternative deals.
Oh, there you go.
He wants manticore meat. That's great, because then you've got to go, like, you've got a quest.
That's a good one.
Know any juicy secrets?
Be a very juicy secret. 5,000 gold's a lot.
That would have to be juicy. Yeah, so you can go really far with this. Yeah.
Very cool.
Another small example, we can start a new one, is, and this is, I alluded to this earlier, is coming up with names for your NPCs. Because sometimes when you're playing a game, you just need a guy. They go into a shop and there's a shopkeep there, or they ask some random person on the side of the street a question of how to get somewhere. And normally you can say, oh yeah, you talk to this woman and she says XYZ. And then everyone moves on. However, and I have a particular player who's going to see this episode who knows I'm talking about him. I have a player who likes to stop and throw me a monkey wrench and say, Ned, what is the name of this NPC? And he knows I'm very bad at coming up with these off the top of my head. And this is how you end up with an elven society filled with people named John.
Right.
So we could say, give me 20 random names, 20 names of NPCs my players might encounter in an elven city.
Great.
Lyrial Mist on Water, Namara Moonshadow. Pretty good. So now you can just have this list and cross it off and say, this is Lindery Leaf Song.
And we're going to make this better too. You can actually make it so it's more grounded in your universe. So for instance, I have a society in my campaign that's based off the ancient Romans. So I want a lot of Latin to show up because it grounds it in that sort of idea. But I don't want to ask it for NPC names and get 30 versions of Marcus Aurelius.
You could say Latin inspired. Rewrite
exactly.
The names
so you can say
inspired by Latin.
Yes.
So what's the name of the city? or the culture or whatever it is that's Roman inspired. I'm just going to build a little.
Yes, the city is called Lunar Heights.
So what if we just did this, Lunar Heights, and told it that it's based on Rome?
Yep.
Loosely based on Rome with Latin names. Latin style names. And then we could say, the rule, do not give me variations of existing, of well-known, famous Romans.
Good.
You can actually do that. So we could say, now that it knows about Lunar Heights, give me names of 20 NPCs my players might encounter in Lunar Heights.
Cool.
And you could add more and more color to this.
Yep. Boom. Aetius Varius. Bruna Emeria.
It's not Maximus Aurelius or whatever, so.
It's not.
Yep.
Gaius Scipio.
That's, can't always be perfect.
Junius Rufus. Charismatic bard who can frequently be found performing in city squares. Cool.
Yeah.
Great.
And I've even built on this too, because I've had, there's factions, and I can give them different naming schemes to say oh, well, this should be, Latin inspired, but also have a twinge of Germanic in there. And you could do that, and you can say, give me a name of someone from the Ancilian clan, and it remembers all of the, little intricacies you want to express for that particular name.
So we could say there's a gang that has more Germanic style names. Give me 5 ideas. That's not much to go off of, but let's see what it says. Yeah, or with the bold. That sounds pretty good. Oh, look, it's actually building out the structure of the gang.
Wow. Second in command.
And you can get even more in depth with a lot more instructions to say, maybe the first half of the name should sound Latin-y, and then the second half should sound Germanic.
Sure.
Neat. As you work with this, researching something or building out an idea or writing a book or whatever, as it generates things, I find myself copying these things off, folding them into other prompts. And what we really need is better tools for working with this, where I want to be able to highlight this and right click and say, create a snippet, call it whatever the gang is called, and then actually be able to continue to work on it and fold things into that snippet. And then this over here should be, instead of it should just have the name of the snippet. This is the, whatever the gang is, the gang.
Yeah.
And it just substitutes that with whatever's in that snippet. That doesn't exist. Yeah. Please build it, someone. It's a bigger idea than most of the big content companies that are raising tens of millions of dollars.
We only got a few minutes left, Ned. What else do you have up your sleeve?
Yes. So the biggest one, and it's too bad we don't have more time for this, but we'll touch base on it a little bit, is world building. It's really great at that and getting really down into the details about your world. So I mentioned the city Lunar Heights. It's actually been in my universe for 20 years through various campaigns. So I've been constantly building on the lore. We've seen characters and parts of the city's faction all around in the universe. And then eventually, actually just this year, my players actually arrived at that city, and I realized I had 20 years of lore that I had to incorporate in an actual real fantasy world city that I had to start actually describing, which became a problem because I was cashing checks. I was running checks I couldn't cash later on. So for instance, in the center of the city is this big mesa. And in the lore, I said there's a big aquifer in it, and whoever controls the big mesa in the center sort of controls the city because they have control over this vital resource. But then came the question, how big is it?
Yeah.
How do I actually describe this thing? And I started asking questions of GPT to help me build out these things. Like, how big would this mesa be if it had an aquifer to provide water for 100,000 people?
Oh,
Which is a lot. That's a lot of people.
now this is math. Is it going to get stuck on
this
math?
is math.
This is some math. Yes.
This might be a better question for code interpreter
Right.
inside of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But we'll just see what it comes up with. Oh, that's actually.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, I didn't set the maximum length high enough. It might stop. 20 to 25 gallons per day per person.
7.
I guess that's including showers and things, huh? Like, that's high
seems
for
a
drinking.
lot,
But
yeah.
if you're showering like an American does,
Yeah.
you could actually use
Although-
that much every day.
That does seem high for a fantasy society,
Yep. I agree.
unless they have showers.
Yeah.
Let's cut it in half. Well, okay. So, but the point is, though, you could massage this into something that's usable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if this math checks out. Code interpreter and ChatGPT could write you some Python that would be like, we could actually do that if we had time. You could check its work and understand what it's doing. Do you want to know how much space this takes up, right?
Yes.
You want to actually switch over to ChatGPT and just do this real quick?
Sure.
Do we have time?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So we'll do this. I'm going to just hide that.
While you're setting that up too, I'll say, we're going to do this example, but you can keep building stuff out. So in my case, I built out, I started using GPT to help me generate ideas so that I can narrow down on the interesting ones faster with my own limited time
Right.
to do all this. But I said, like, okay, so now we've got this city, give me some ideas for places that, and in my campaign, my players are there to subvert the ruling emperor in power. So I said, give me some targets they could go after,
Right.
places that would be important, infrastructure wise in the city.
That's pretty cool what Brian just did there. He said, introduce thyself. Introduce yourself. And it did. Came up with an introductory paragraph.
You could actually, what I've learned is that when you're making a bot like this, it can actually be helpful to give it a personality that is conducive to what you're doing. We're not going to go into that right now, but it did make up Lucius Quintus. I usually ask it to make up someone who would be helpful. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to say, first of all, be much more brief with your responses, Lucius.
Good.
So we want to make sure that it actually ends up writing code and not
Wow,
just
now
doing
it's
this
saying
with-
each person uses an average of 100 gallons of water. Well, maybe you ought to redo that with the, assumption that everybody uses 10 gallons of water a day.
Yes, we can definitely do that.
I can't read that.
The average American actually uses. Yeah, I can't either. So check this out. The average American apparently uses 300 gallons of water per day.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
That is crazy. I guess we're
Wow.
watering lawns and all that. Maybe it's factoring in food. That's
Maybe.
just a random Google search. Okay, so sorry, I was in another window researching things, but this is Python code. You could tell it to adjust this, but
Mhm.
I'm guessing if you looked at this, you could understand exactly what it's doing and how that ties into what it's set up here. They're not perfect cubes. So this is what we wanted to know. The side length of a hypothetical cube containing this volume would be approximately 624.87 feet.
So 624 cubic feet.
Mesas are not perfect cubes. So it actually depends on its shape and depth. So that is interesting. You could continue going with this and try to figure out like how much land space this would take up.
Right.
And this is really cool for sci-fi style world building where people are really exact sometimes about like, well, if we had 12 moons, the gravity would do this and that, and we'd have this problem. Or like, what would be required for a donut-shaped planet? What would happen? What would the factors have to be? There's actually, I think that's a ring world.
Pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
This was a cool exercise. And Ned, thank you for joining us. It's been great fun.
Oh, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
All right. Hey, we'll see you next week on the AI Bot Show. Bye-bye.